Good day, I'm Rocky. This presentation is how I go about putting a dual coil build in my Zathog RDA. This is a follow-up to my original comprehensive review of the Zathog RDA posted on YouTube. The Zathog RDA/RSA is a collaboration of Cthulhu Mods and Morton Owen, and there are plenty of reviews already, but this is not a review. Again, it is a comprehensive look at how I prepare, set up, and build dual coils in the Zathog, and an explanation of the process. I have no intent to shill for Cthulhu Mods or the Zathog RDA, only to pass along what I have learned. Before we drop a build into Zathog, we need to examine the airflow and determine how best to use it. The Zathog RDA is a dual-coil postless deck atomizer with a center dam that separates the coils, essentially creating two small single-coil atomizers in the same package. Each separate area for the coils measures approximately 10.75 millimeters tall, including the domed area of the top cap, 12 millimeters wide at the edges of the build deck, with a 10.5 millimeter space between the side airflow inlet and the center dam. By comparison, a single die is 16 millimeters by 16 millimeters by 16 millimeters. It has two adjustable airflows that direct air to the side of each coil, much like a single coil atomizer with side airflow. It also has two adjustable top airflows that likewise direct air to the top of each coil. With both AFCs, what you adjust on one side is repeated on the other side. The top AFC ring is independently adjustable from the side AFC, which is adjusted by rotating the top cap. I don't have fancy cameras or elaborate video capabilities, but I do have an ample supply of Placker's dental flossers. Those plastic dental tools were just the right thickness and width to fit snugly into the airflow ports of the Zathog to illustrate the angle of the incoming airflow. So I trimmed the plackers to size, stuck them in the air ports to illustrate the direction of the incoming airflow. I also cut a section of hunter orange construction paper to fit inside the top cap to help illustrate the incoming airflow and the size of the areas created by the build deck and center dam configuration of the Zathog. The side or bottom airflow ports are angled downward, and regardless of coil diameter, it is intended to strike the side of the coil at about the 4 o'clock position, causing the airstream to pass under the coils. So the height of the coil above the postless deck is critical for the best cooling effect, flavor, and vapor production. Exceeding the width of the postless deck and raising the top of the coils above the dam can create the possibility of a short between the coils and the top cap. The top cap airflow ports direct air to the top area of the coils and is angled so that most of that air is directed between the dam and the side of the coils. Some of that top airflow will also be drawn down to the side of the coils towards the airflow coming in from the side. This is intended to create a vortex of cooling air around the entire coil when vaping, provided the coils are positioned correctly according to their size. That's enough about the Zathog's airflow. So, this is how I build for the Zathog my way. For this build, I chose 26 gauge NI-80 round wire and hand hammered it flat. I much prefer hammered flat wire coils because, number one, At a given resistance and coil inner diameter, hammered flat wire will cover as much surface area as a Clapton wire coil. 2. It will have considerably less mass, allowing it to ramp up and cool down quicker. 3. It can be used with less power, drawing fewer amps, and is less stressful on the batteries. 4. It has a smaller outer diameter, allowing it to be used in builds that are too cramped for thicker wire coils. 5. It can be built to a higher resistance and still have the performance of a lower resistance coil. 6. It doesn't take me any longer to hammer out than it would to build a multi-wire coil. And 7. It requires less setup and fewer tools. Just an old repurposed ball-peen hammer and a flat, smooth jeweler's steel plate. So, I hammered flat a section of wire and installed the entire length in a large loop in my Apocalypse RDA build deck. I used this deck as a test bed and build deck to test, trim, and glow in the vast majority of my coils before installation. That section of wire had a resistance of 2.06 ohms as measured by my Coilmaster 521 Mini V2. With that knowledge, I knew I could make 2 coils with a resistance of approximately 1 ohm each, and in a dual coil configuration. By the final build, it would be somewhere between 0.4 and 0.5 ohms. Wrapping up 2 6x7 wrap 3mm inner diameter coils gave me coils that wouldn't wrap up faster than the tight wicking could feed them. I bent the legs to the same side of the coil, cut them evenly, and temporarily installed them to illustrate that bending the legs will center the coils in the deck when installed and also bring light to one of my cons for the Zathog. While the machining and finish on the Zathog is very good, the positive post hole is about 1 millimeter shallower than the negative side post hole. As you can see in the illustration, the positive leg of the coils will need to be cut shorter to ensure the coils are level when installed. The post holes for the Zathog are approximately 8 millimeters deep on the positive side and 9 millimeters deep on the negative side. I used a Coil tool to measure and trim the legs. However, as illustrated, at the first glance, the coil only goes up to 8 millimeters, but I have found that using the spacings and notches along the side of the coil, I can achieve greater lengths. And as you can see, I've labeled the notches to aid in these additional measurements. For these coils, I cut the positive legs to 10 millimeters and the negative legs to 11 millimeters. This shows what I consider to be the best placement for the side airflow. Granted, coils of different inner and outer diameter will need to be adjusted higher or lower to take advantage of the airflow as shown. After glowing in and wicking, the resistance settled in at 0.43 ohms. Wicking the Zathog is an easy task, given that there are no obstructions, but the coils for this build required a delicate touch to wick tightly. Had I used 24 gauge wire, they would have been less likely to be pulled by the wicking during installation. With the higher gauge wires, I will often trim the legs and wick the coils before installation. Doing so allows me to wick them tighter and keep them from deforming. Squonking for the Zathog is efficient. The juice enters at the top center of the juice wells between the coil wicks on either side of the build deck. Should the build deck be flooded, excess juice will be drawn back but leave a very good amount in the large juice wells to continue to feed the wicks. I am running this particular build at 60 watts and with the bottom airflow wide open and the top airflow about 1/3 open. That setting gives me a somewhat restricted direct lung vape, very good flavor, and dense vapor production. You may prefer a higher wattage, more or less airflow to satisfy your vaping palate. This is what works best for me and my vaping style. That is all I have for this presentation. I do follow this process of building in general on all my atomizers. I consider the battery manufacturer's listed CDR first, the type of atomizer, the build deck, and airflow when planning for resistance and physical size of my coils. There are many different ways to achieve the same goal. This is just my way. Take what you can use and leave the rest. Thanks for your time and consideration. And as always, be safe and have a vape day.